Everyone. Well, I'm super excited. It's Whatever It Takes Wednesday. Whatever It Takes Wednesday was created based on a phrase that one of my greatest all time mentors would say when we were on calls. And it was it was such a big it was such a big learning lesson because what I would notice, and a lot of these, not all of them, but a lot of these were group calls. And so we would show up and we would ask our great mentor, what would you do if, or, this happened, uh, with a client or potential client, like as an example. Oh, one of my big learning lessons. But I was working with I was working with a client, and I was doing some sales training. Now, this was before I did the fractional work. Right now, I do fractional work with some of my clients, which means it's temporary. It's not permanent. It may or may not be a longer term project, but thinking of initially of like a 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? So what happened was I didn't communicate clearly what the 100 leads would kind of look like, or what condition they would be in. That was my fault. Okay. So I assumed, which is something none of us should do, but I assumed that they knew that 100 leads meant 100 leads, not necessarily qualified. They would be narrowed down from a starting bunch of 1,000. But when we were ready to deliver the 100 leads, that did not mean that every one of those 100 were ready to do business with that particular company. So it was a big learning lesson for me. So, anyways, that was one of the questions that I posed to my great mentor. And of course, his answer was to, to recommend that we put them in an academy that we had available, which offered additional training. And most likely, our mentor would always say, he would answer it, giving some good insights based on his experience. And often he would say, just make sure you do whatever it takes, or try this, but do whatever it takes. And so after listening to him on several of these calls, that's when I decided that I was going to designate a day of the week to whatever it takes, because I feel it's an awesome philosophy, and it it really is something that all of us should embrace. Now, we should not just do whatever it takes on Wednesdays, of course, right? But we can start out that way. And then, we should be doing whatever it takes to have the best day every day. However, if maybe, you're at a point in your life where, you know, things just don't seem that great sometimes. And that is okay, because you we all go through phases in our careers, in our lives. Some people may refer to them as seasons, just like there are seasons to our year. But one of the greatest learning lessons that has been so important to me, and that I love to share, is the philosophy of whatever it takes. So I don't know if anybody, I can't see the chat on my streaming service. I would have to go on my phone to see if anybody's on. But If anybody writes in the comments, if then I will answer those in the comments. I don't want to look at my phone right now because I don't want to take away from the interaction that we have with the camera. And I want you to be listening, and I want you to be thinking, because my mentor that taught me about whatever it takes also taught me a great lesson about scheduling time to think. Because we get into the mode of do. uh, it's important to pat ourselves on our backs, right? To celebrate our successes, to recognize also things that maybe didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to or we thought they should. But just giving ourselves time to think, even if it's only 5 minutes a day or if it's 15 minutes a day, you will find a huge improvement, most likely in your results and in how you feel about approaching challenges, about how you feel about meeting and exceeding your goals. Because that time to think, that time to reflect, will give you the opportunity to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. When I was at AT&T, I had a wonderful boss. He's a wonderful boss. He was a manager when I was on assignment at an operations center. So it was one of the few times in my career at AT&T that I was not in a direct selling role, responsible for quota, responsible for KPIs. They put me in an operations center for a period of 2 years so that I could learn what it took behind the scenes to actually implement the complex services that I sold. It was a great learning experience because all of a sudden then I was a manager working with the technicians that were actually responsible for implementing services that I sold. So I was able to see the behind the scenes, all of the things, and connect the dots. Not to mention build relationships with my peers. And the other great thing was I was able to get some of that experience of managing a union team. Unions are very important to me because my dad was always a member of a union, and they offer many wonderful things because they all stand strong, they all stand together. And I'm not here to get into any kind of a political discussion, but I love the idea of unions. So it was a great opportunity for me to be able to manage that, to be able to identify the rules and regulations and navigate through there. Because of course there were challenges, like any position in management, whether you're managing a union-based team or you're managing just a non-union based team. Always lessons, right? Always the capability to be able to connect the dots as we look back. But today's topic is doing whatever it takes. So yeah, my question, my prompt to you was, hop on and and really get clear. Maybe use this time to think, what is it going to take to get you from where you are to where you want to be? I believe that we all know really what we should be doing. Now, obviously, as Marshall Goldsmith has always taught us, whatever got us to where we are today isn't going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow and beyond. We have to always be learning. But what we learn, we have to make sure that we're implementing and executing on those. So it's not about enrolling in a challenge. It's not about enrolling in a challenge. It's not about enrolling in all these different courses and not taking action, because that is not going to get you to where you need to be. But I do believe that if you take the time to think, if you have a select group of board of directors, which does not involve friends that have not done what you're seeking to do. It does not involve relatives that have not done what you're seeking to do. It involves a board of directors, or a, select group of mentors who can guide you. Now, I believe that or have some type of an idea on what's not going to get you to where you want to be. So then, of course, we need to we need to fill the gaps and figure out what is going to get us to where we need to be. Should we hire a mentor who has done what we're seeking to do? It's important that we take action, even if they're just little steps every day. But you do need to keep in mind that life, raising kids, building a business, meeting your KPIs if you're in a sales role, leading a team, it's not as simple as just following the directions. Sometimes there aren't even any directions, you know. Hopefully, we get to a point, or our company has SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. But perhaps maybe, if you are just starting or kind of shooting from the hip, you may not have all of those, but that's okay, because even when you do have the standard operating procedures, there are things that we're always learning. There are not always set directions. We should have a process for, let's say, onboarding new clients. We should have a process for, we should have a process for qualifying clients. Some of it might be automated, some of it may be manual. And we should follow those processes. We shouldn't deviate from those processes. However, like I said, we don't have a complete list of directions. We may have some anomalies come up. We may have some situations that we've never been faced with before. So, you as leaders, you as responsible, happy executives, need to be able to make very good, quick decisions so that you don't have a break point. So, so that you don't have a hurdle that you cannot get over. Now, that's not to say that we're all not going to have some kind of setbacks, some things that we didn't plan for. That's okay. That's going to happen. You don't want to have a series of those, of course, but if you do have a setback or you're faced with a hurdle that you can't get over, learn from that and make a commitment to know what is it going to take so that that doesn't happen again. One of the biggest lessons that I learned was how to gracefully fall on our swords. That was the terminology that was taught to me, and this goes back to my AT&T days when I was in sales. And I was early on in sales because it was my first real outside sales job. I had been in retail, but retail's not comparable to outside sales, because, obviously in retail, people are coming to us. I worked at the limited stores because I loved clothes and I loved the discount. But, obviously the customers were already walking in the door. So that was easy. We had a captivated audience. We could make suggestions. We could make recommendations. We could upsell them with different accessories. But then when you get in outside sales, in most cases, we are responsible, or perhaps we have a team of setters, but we are responsible for generating that interest, for creating a sense of urgency, for qualifying that client, right? So we need to make sure that when we are faced with those hurdles, those obstacles that we didn't anticipate, that we learn from those and that we document those, preferably in our standard operating procedures, so that people, our colleagues, our teammates, if they are faced with that, that there is a process. We need processes and we need systems to be able to scale effectively and profitably. We cannot shoot from the hip. But the reason why I got on this was I had a great manager at an operations center that I worked at AT&T. However, he did not like to pre-plan and he did shoot from the hip a lot. Now, that I learned to adapt to that style, but that I would get anxious about because in my mind, right or wrong, I wanted to have a process and I wanted to follow that process. Now, I certainly learned that it's not possible all the time. You know, when an employee comes to you or a team member comes to you with a situation that you had never been faced before, I had to depend on my own self to figure out what to do. One particular situation was an employee of mine that I managed. I was responsible for a billing team and a team of people that processed bills for our clients. And this was not consumer, this was business clients. So, anyways, she had a tendency to call off lots and lots of times, sometimes consecutive days. Now, I was a manager to a union team, so I did have the union guidelines I was able to follow. Now, in this particular case, the reason why she wasn't coming in, she called off one day. This wasn't the first day that she called off. She called off one day because she was in her pantry in the kitchen and a can of beans fell on her head. So she had a bump on her head. Okay. Well, this was before we did have cell phones, but I think they were like flip phones. And this was before we had cameras on our phones. So I'm quite sure that I don't know if I would have been able to ask for a picture or not of the bump on her head, whatever. But uh, I I really didn't know what I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. And maybe that was because I was still, young in my management career per se. But no one had ever said that to me before, that they had a can of beans that fell on their head. Now, I knew that I could appeal to her sense of wanting to help the team and not let the team down because we had deadlines. And she was responsible. She actually had the most seniority. And so she was responsible for, our most complex billing. And we had a deadline. And she knew way more than I did that I could have ever figured out because I had only been there about a year at the time. But, anyways, uh, and she was, like I said, she had the most seniority. So I knew that I pretty much had two choices. I could either appeal to her sense of wanting to help the team and not let the team down. Perhaps she could feel better and come in later. Or I could take the conservative route and less confrontation and just say, I'm so sorry that that happened. I hope that you feel better. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you tomorrow. I did the second option, choosing less confrontation, more conservative on the safe side. But of course, that sent us, the ones that were there, into a tailspin because there were things that only she knew. And so we were able to meet the deadline. We had a few mistakes in there, but luckily she didn't come back the next day, but she came back the day after. So we were able to. We had a little bit of a grace period. So when she did get back, she was able to make those corrections. But, you know, uh, some people would have said that I should have done option one, appealing to like maybe Could you possibly, put some ice on your head, or maybe if you take some Tylenol, and then if you feel better in a couple hours, perhaps you can come in. I just at that point in my career didn't feel comfortable doing that, because quite frankly, she had to drive about 45 minutes, and I was worried about her safety. So I chose the less confrontation, which was typical for me because I don't love confrontation. I've learned to deal with it, but I don't like to address. I maybe no one does, but I don't. I prefer not to have to address it. Now I've had to address it, because as my career progressed, I had to have those difficult conversations. I had to terminate people. I had to ask a lot of questions, which led to confrontation. But at that point in my career, whenever I could avoid confrontation, I did avoid confrontation. And I learned from that. But my point is that you need to figure out, with some clarity and with some action steps, what is it going to take to get you to where you want to be? Okay, so we're just in the first quarter, wrapping up March. What is it going to take to get you to where you want to be? Maybe you're on track to exceed your goals. Maybe a couple roadblocks happened and you're a little bit behind. You still have plenty of time to catch up and to, make up for maybe some of the shortfalls that you have for this first quarter, but you're going to need to figure out, what is it going to take. Maybe you do need to hire a mentor. Maybe you do need to learn some new skills. I mean, we should all be learning new skills, but we should be learning new skills that we're going to implement into our lives and into our businesses. Not just learning them to say that we did it, not just filling our time, filling our head with an audible book, or, filling our head with a podcast on something that we're not going to take action on. One of the high level masterminds that I was in, it had to do with speaking and writing. And this goes back probably, probably almost 10 years. I learned a great lesson from a colleague of mine, where when we would go to these 2 or 3 day events, she would make a short list of the items that she was committed to implementing, instead of just taking it all in. Because you know, raise your hand if you're a good note taker. I love taking notes. Even to this day, I love putting pen to paper. When I was in high school, a lot of my friends, a lot of my, you know, uh, fellow students would like to copy my notes. And I always felt so honored that people liked to follow my notes and they asked to use my notes or borrow my notes. That always made me feel really good. But what I learned from my colleague, like I said, about almost 10 years ago, is she made a very short list of what she was committed to doing. And I learned from that and I started following her process. So I would encourage you to think about that. Like, if you're going to invest your time in an all day event, maybe a VIP event, maybe it's a VIP weekend, maybe it's a live event. If you commit to going to the live event, don't just, fill your notebook with a bunch of stuff. Make a short list of what stuff you're actually going to take action on, like what you're actually committed to doing. And this actually goes, I won't go into this today because we don't have time, but this actually goes with my not to do list teaching, because what I was finding was, and this was a big aha during 2020 when we were going through and experiencing all these adjustments, because I had a lot of clients that they were used to working in the office and they were fine going to the office. And then all of a sudden they had to work from home and they were having a really difficult time. And so what I had them do was create a not to do list. And a lot of things on that not to do list were Netflix, household chores, playing with the pets, getting super clear I had them not doing anything besides work until they were able to master and be productive. And then, maybe they could put a load of clothes in before they start at work. But it was way too distracting for them all of a sudden when they were used to being in the office, and then all of a sudden they're at home, but they were still responsible for the same results, right? So that's where my not to do list thing comes in. But like I said, I don't have time to get into that today. But you owe yourself time to think so that you can figure out where you are and where you need to be and what is it going to take. And then make sure you break that into the actionable steps and hold yourself accountable. Even if you do have a coach that can, act as an accountability person, an accountability figure in your life, you ultimately are responsible for yourself as well. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody is going to do the work for you. You may have some team members that are able to help and contribute. But if you're the CEO and you're the founder, you have to drive those results. And if people that are on your team are not fulfilling those KPIs, they're not fulfilling those responsibilities, they need to go. Whether it's your responsibility or an HR person or a director, you cannot allow them to hang around. Because if they hang around, chances are their habits that are not so good will transfer to someone else. Or if they don't, if they're not a good fit with the culture or the personality, that can impact and really cause problems with your team. So, my challenge to you is, when are you going to schedule time to think, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, so that you can get super clear on where you are, where you want to be, and make a short list of what it's going to take to get there? And if you don't know exactly what it's going to take to get there, send me a DM. I'd love to jump on a short call with you and help you figure out from an objective opinion what it is, what's it going to take, how far away are you to getting to where you want to be. Okay. I believe in you. I know you can do this. And I believe that you know that too. So let's work together and make 2024 our best year ever. Okay. Have a wonderful, blessed, and happy Wednesday, happy Thursday for the people that are already in our future. All right. So take care, everyone. Put in the comments what you thought about this live event and what you thought about the whatever it takes philosophy. Do you use it? And if you do, tell me why. If you don't, tell me why as well. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.